Time now for our CBS 21 Political Insiders. Democratic strategist Tony May with us here, and Charlie Giroux on the Republican side.
Guys, as always, thanks for being here. We want to start out with the NSA. A lot still going on with this. Army General Keith Alexander told the House Intelligence Committee today that the NSA's doings with these two programs, as far as our phones are concerned and the internet, helped thwart 50 possible terrorist attacks. Are the American people seeing the importance of this, or are they still saying, no, hands off, you're invading my privacy?
We promised Tony he could start last week.
That's right, we did.
That's right. And I think the answer is yes on both counts. I think that people will believe that it did thwart terrorist activities because it is a form of surveillance that is very pervasive. But I think people are also uncomfortable because it is so pervasive, and they're not sure how much the government is reading, or is, even if they say they're not reading, that they are reading some of the messages and they know what's going on. But this is a price I think we've had to pay for the war on terrorism. I think people were beginning to believe that we were out of the war, or we had won the war, and we could go back to the good old days, but it doesn't seem that's going to happen soon.
Charlie.
The founders warned us about sacrificing liberty and freedom for security, and I think that really is where this comes down to in terms of debate, and it makes for very interesting and strange political bedfellows, because you've got some of the most liberal members of Congress linked up with some of the most conservative members in agreement with what the NSA is doing. Meanwhile, on the outside, you've got Michael Moore and Glenn Beck singing off the same song sheet. But this is going to be a spirited debate. Yeah. And the question, I think, ultimately turns on the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution and whether these very broad, very, very broad, rather than specific, warrantless searches are proper.
And we do have a viewer question. Zach Davis posted on our CBS 21 News Facebook page, wanted us to ask you guys, what ramifications do you think that the timing of the NSA leaks will have on the relations at the G8 summit that's currently going on, Tony?
I don't think it's going to have a great impact. I think, as we saw on the news tonight, Syria is the big issue. This issue with China and cyber theft or cyber attacks, I think would have already been dealt with by the president and the premier of China. But I think that Europe is tremendously focused on the threat of Israel, that Syria would expand into Israel and become a big conflagration.
Charlie?
Zach asks a great question, a little bit, frankly, above my pay grade, so attaboy, Zach. But I think Tony is generally right. Yeah. Syria is going to dominate this discussion. But it is interesting, the issue of Chinese hacking, et cetera, and cyber warfare, with Snowden determining that he should go to China, I think raises questions and kind of is percolating underneath the G8 summit.
Yeah, I was just tweeted a viewer question, which leads us to our next topic. The president's approval ratings have dropped to 45%, down from 53%. 6 in 10 Americans object to the way the president handled the surveillance situation, and that scores worse than President Bush on that particular issue. So PA Dutchman tweets me, can President Obama ever recover from all the goings-on in Washington, D.C. right now? Seems hopeless to me. Charlie?
He's got a tough situation. I mean, this administration, quite bluntly, is in free fall, and so are their approval ratings, and with good reason. And the problem, ultimately, for the Obama administration is that we've got all these pronouncements by the president that don't lead us anywhere. With Benghazi, he said, we'll get to the bottom of this. Well, here we are 9 months later, and we have more questions than answers. He said heads will roll with respect to the IRS. Whose heads have rolled? And so you've got all these unanswered questions and lingering issues out there, and he has to tackle them one at a time, at a time, at a time, and more are coming up behind it. So it's death by 1,000 cuts in some respects.
I think that Charlie's right. I think that the president has to man up and address some of these things in a very decisive fashion. He's shown that he could do that in the past. He's got to move ahead now. But there is a benchmark by which the president can measure himself that should give him some consolation. Congress's approval rating is at 10, 1-0, an all-time low.
Wow.
All right. We'll leave it with that statement.
Charlie Giroux, guys, as always, thank you. And don't forget, tweet us your questions for our political insiders. You can also post them on our CBS 21 News Facebook page. And we will ask them here every Tuesday with our political insiders on CBS 21 News at 5:30.
That's right.